Sunday, January 23rd, 1695, in the jurisdiction of San Germán, a woman named Juana Díaz was found dead with a rope around her neck in the kitchen of her own home. Today, an entire town in Puerto Rico bears her name. But before there was a municipality called Juana Díaz, there was a woman living, working, and moving through her daily life, whose death would be recorded, investigated, and argued over the pages of a criminal file that survives more than 3 centuries later. The record does not begin with a confession. It does not begin with a suspect. It begins with a body. The documents describe her body as bearing clear signs of violence. She had been attacked inside of her house, in the place where she lived and worked. Her death was not natural, it was not accidental, and it was understood immediately to be a homicide. Those who encountered her body did not find the weapon neatly placed nearby. They did not find a witness waiting to speak. What they found was silence and the certainty that someone had killed her. Word spread quickly throughout the surrounding districts. Not certainty, not truth, but rumor. And rumor in colonial Puerto Rico was enough to begin an investigation. Responsibility for this case fell to the local authority of the region. The investigation was conducted by Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of San Germán. As alcalde, he held extraordinary power. He acted simultaneously as investigator, examining magistrate, and judicial authority. There was no separate police force, no forensic science. There were only statements, oaths, and pressure. Guillermo de Lugo ordered witnesses summoned, testimony recorded, statements ratified. And when words failed to resolve the case, he authorized harsher measures. Measures fully documented in the record. Everything you are about to hear comes from those records. Not from later retellings, not from legend, but from sworn testimony, judicial orders, and confessions. Some freely given, others forced. This is not a reenactment. This is not historical fiction. What you are about to hear is the case as it unfolded, in the order it was recorded. You will hear the witnesses speak before the court knew who to believe. You will hear accusations from before evidence existed to support them. You will hear how suspicion hardened into certainty and how certainty later unraveled. I will not name the suspects in advance. I will not tell you who the authorities believed was guilty at the beginning. You will learn what the court learned when it learned it. I will read the testimony. I will ask the questions the court asked. I will follow the logic the investigation followed without hindsight. And you will serve as the jury. You will hear what the witnesses said. You will hear how pressure changed stories and how some stories never changed at all. And at the end, I will not tell you who killed Juana Díaz. I will tell you only what the witnesses say. This is not a story about justice served cleanly. It's not a story with a tidy resolution. It's a case shaped by fear, power, rumor, and coercion. A case where the truth struggled to survive inside a system that demanded answers quickly. Juana Díaz is dead, murdered. Someone killed her. But whether the court ever truly knew who the person was, that is the question. I am Darren Castro Torres, the genealogist, and this is Who Killed Juana Díaz, the story behind Puerto Rico's first true crime. Bring in our first witness. January 1695. This is the testimony of Diego de Morales, a resident of the town of San Germán. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth of what he knows, and having been questioned and examined in the tenor of this case and proceeding, having heard and understood it, he states the following. Diego de Morales says that while he was present in the public jail of San Germán, news arrived from the district of Ponce. He states that he was told that a married woman had been found dead inside her own house, in the area known as Capitanejo. He says that the body shows signs of violence, including marks to the neck and injuries consistent with an attack. He explains that this information reached him through the others who have traveled from Ponce, and that the news was repeated by an enslaved man who had passed through nearby estates. He states that the neighbors then went and searched for the alcalde, who was then in the valley of Cuamo, so that the matter could be reported to the authorities. Diego de Morales concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he has declared, and he affirms this under oath. The witness is approximately 46 years old. He does not know how to write. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. January 25th, 1695. This is the testimony of Domingo, a black enslaved man belonging to Juan Lorenzo Ranero. From him, the court receives an oath by God and the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, he states the following. Domingo says that what he knows concerning this criminal cause is the same as what Diego de Morales has already stated. He explains that while he was on the site known as Consejo on the estate of his master, there arrived a black enslaved man belonging to Captain Cristobal Pabon. Manuel told him that in the town of Ponce, at the site called Capitanejo, on the bank of the Rio Jacagua, a married woman had been found dead approximately 4 or 5 days earlier. He says that after this, some people went to the Valley of Cuamo in search of the alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, Antonio de Torres, because he was there in that town. Domingo states that this news had been acquired by Manuel in the site of Tayaboa from the people traveling from Ponce. He concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he has already declared, and that this is the truth under oath that he took. The witness is about 50 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. January 26, 1695. This is the testimony of Cristobal de Lugo de Buenaventura, a resident of the town of San Germán. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Cristobal de Lugo de Buenaventura says that on Monday, the 24th of the current month, he was in the site of Tayaboa, on his way towards Ponce. While there, he encountered Marcos de la Peña and asked him whether there was any news from Ponce. Marcos de la Peña told him that the news was that a married woman had been found dead in the kitchen of her house where she lived, in the site of Capitanejo. He said that her body was found with 3 loops around her neck, and that on Sunday, the 23rd of the current month, her death was attributed to a blow from a mace. He further stated that it was not known who had done it. Cristobal de Lugo de Buenaventura says that when he arrived in Ponce later that same Monday, he heard several people, whose names he does not recall, say publicly that Domingo de Leon, the husband of the deceased woman, and a brother-in-law of his, had been on guard duty aboard vessels together with others. He states that because of this, Juan de Santiago was present with them, and that on Sunday, around midday, they requested leave for Domingo de Leon to go to his house, and Juan de Santiago granted him permission. He further states that when Domingo de Leon and his brother arrived at the door of his house, Alferez Francisco de Alvarado also arrived, bringing with him a laborer for the burial of the deceased woman, because he had been instructed to do so. Cristobal de Lugo de Buenaventura says that the 3 of them entered the mother-in-law's house of the deceased woman, and that when the woman did not appear, they judged that she must be eating. They then went down to the kitchen, where they found her lying dead, as has already been stated. He adds that they then sent word to Alcalde Antonio de Torres, who was in the Valley of Cuamo, and who had arrived in town the same Monday, and began making inquiries. Cristobal de Lugo de Buenaventura concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he has already declared, and that he affirms this to be the truth under the oath that he took. The witness is about 28 years of age, more or less. And with that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. January 26, 1695. This is the testimony of Francisco Muñoz de Rivera, a resident of the city of Puerto Rico, an inhabitant of the town of Ponce and its jurisdiction. From him, the court receives an oath by God and the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined in the tenor of this criminal case. Having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Francisco Muñoz de Rivera says that while he was in the site of Pastillo, within the jurisdiction of the Valley of Guamo, 2 vessels appeared on the district of Friday of the current month, with a squad of men. Because of this, Juan de Santiago departed from that site, and on the following Sunday, the 23rd, all the people withdrew, each returning to their own house. He states that afterwards, he arrived at the house of Beatriz de Rivera on the other side of the Rio de Jacagua, where several people were gathered playing cards. While there, Valerio, the brother of Domingo de Leon, arrived, saying that he had gone to help his sister-in-law, Juana Díaz, wife of the said Domingo, whom they had found hanged inside the kitchen of her own house, strangled with a halter. He further states that together with Sebastian de Morales, Jacinto Montañez, Juan de Soto, and Jacinto de Rivera, and accompanied by Valerio and some women, they went to the site of Capitanejo, on this side of the Rio de Jacagua, to the house of Domingo de Leon. Upon arriving, they found Valerio and Alferez Francisco de Alvarado there alone. Francisco de Alvarado told them that when they arrived at the house, that they found Juana Díaz inside the kitchen, still warm, with the halter around her neck, having 2 turns around her neck, lying on the ground with one leg bent and pressed against the wall. He states that the house was disturbed and broken up, with bones outside, and then they inferred the blow had been given with a hand mallet found near the body. He says that she was bloodied and that her blood was not yet cold. Francisco Muñoz de Rivera states that when they went to the kitchen and found the deceased woman in the condition already described, except that the rope had been removed. He says that after they wrapped her again and carried her to be buried in the church of Ponce, he states that he does not know who committed the crime. Before removing the body, he says that they determined that the alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, Antonio de Torres, who was in the Valley of Guamo, should be notified, and that Francisco de Santiago went to seek him. He states that the said alcalde arrived later that same Monday and began to detain people and impose penalties in order to determine how the death had occurred. He further states that because the alcalde did not have a clerk, he sent this declarant on the 25th of the current month with a letter to Capitan Juan Ortiz Velez Borrero, requesting a clerk to assist in continuing the proceedings. He says that the letter was delivered the following day between 8 and 10 in the morning. Francisco Muñoz de Rivera concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he had declared, and that this is the truth under the oath that he took. The witness is about 30 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write. With that, the court records his testimony. By the end of January 1695, the investigation changes direction. Up to this point, the court has been gathering statements. Now, it begins to take custody of suspects. On the 29th day of January, in the town of Ponce, several individuals are being held, not in jail, but in a private house, in the home of Inés de Soto, a widow. That day, Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, formally transfers custody to those held to Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of San Germán, who has the jurisdiction over the case. The transfer is recorded in the presence of the court clerk. Those delivered in shackles and placed in jail are Domingo de Leon, husband of the woman who was killed, Valerio de Leon, his brother. Along with them, also delivered into the jail are Diego Garcia, Domingo, Pedro, and Nicholas, all 4 identified as black enslaved men belonging to different persons of the district. In addition to those prisoners, 5 others are delivered as detainees: Francisco de Santiago, Tomás de Rivera, Sebastian de Morales, Miguel de Góngora, and Juan de Santiago. All of them have been held in the house under guard, supervised by Miguel de Zayas, the assistant responsible for their custody. Guillermo de Lugo formally receives them. Miguel de Zayas acknowledges the order and agrees to continue guarding them until further instruction is given by the court. Witnesses are present, The transfer is signed. The case now has prisoners. The court issues its first major order. The following day, Sunday, January 30th, 1695, Guillermo de Lugo issues a formal judicial order. Having reviewed the delivery of the prisoners and the summary already taken concerning the death of Juana Díaz, he orders the proceeding to continue without delay. He commands that all persons with knowledge of the case, whether by sight or hearing, be examined. Anyone who had contact with the deceased before or after death be brought before the court. The site of Capitanejo and the house where Juana Díaz lived be personally inspected. Any signs or indications of how the death occurred be documented. He further orders the seizure and attachment of goods belonging to those who may appear culpable for the crime. Among those named in this order are Domingo de Leon and Valerio de Leon, and others who may later appear responsible. The order is signed. The direction of the case is clear. This is no longer just an inquiry. It's now a full criminal proceeding. Bring in the next witness. January 30th, 1695. This is the testimony of Alferez Francisco de Alvarado, a resident of the town of San Germán, then residing in Ponce. From him, the court receives an oath by God and the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, he states the following. Alferez Francisco de Alvarado says that he knew Juana Díaz, the wife of Domingo de Leon, who lived at the site of Capitanejo. He states that on Sunday, the 23rd of the current month, between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, Juana Díaz entrusted him with a bed frame and a mattress, asking him to take the measurements and prepare the materials as he had gone there to cut the wood. He says that after preparing the materials, he returned to the house that the same Sunday at the same hour. Upon arriving, he heard a noise outside, as if there were people approaching with dogs, and he remained where he was. At that moment, Domingo de Leon and Valerio de Leon, his brother, arrived driving cattle from the grazing grounds at Pastillo and enclosed them in the corral. Francisco de Alvarado says that Domingo de Leon greeted him and removed the halter from the donkey he had been leading. He told Domingo that he had come to deliver the bed frame and mattress that Juana Díaz had requested. After this, as they approached the palisade near the house, the brothers cried out that Juana Díaz was dead. He says that he immediately ran into the house, entered the kitchen, where he found Juana Díaz lying face down on the ground. He observed that part of the roof had collapsed onto her right side, and that her ears were crushed from above, and that her body appeared to have been dragged. He states that he then saw that she had a halter around her neck, tied with 2 knots and a single loop, tight. Shortly afterwards, Jacinto de Montañez arrived, and Domingo de Leon embraced him, saying, "Brother of my soul, look at my dead wife." Francisco de Alvarado says that he removed the halter from around her neck with difficulty, using a stick to loosen the knot. He examined the wound and stated that the injury did not appear to be from a stabbing instrument, but rather from a blow with a halter, which he says was found near the body. He states that she was covered in blood and that her body was still warm, indicating that very little time had passed since her death. He says that after removing the halter, it was left folded there and later shown to others who arrived. He further states that Valerio de Leon was sent to summon people to help wrap her again and carry her to the burial. Among those who arrived, he names Alonso Delgado, Francisco Muñoz de Olivencia, Sebastián de Morales, Francisco de Santiago, Julián Díaz, a black enslaved man named Domingo, and several women whose names he does not recall. With these people, he states, they wrapped her again using a piece of cloth, placed her on a pack saddle, and placed her in the town of Ponce, where she was buried in the Holy Church, which was opened at the hour of Ave Maria by priest Father Alvaro Delgado with the assistance of the sacristan Francisco de Lamboy. Francisco de Alvarado states that he does not know who killed Juana Díaz. He further states that the hogs belonging to the household had been gathered there days before, and that Domingo and Valerio de Leon had been on guard duty with others, under the supervision of Juan de Santiago, though he does not know what hour they left duty. He states that during the prior months, he had frequented the house of Domingo de Leon and Juana Díaz and seen them living peacefully as a married couple without quarrels or ill feelings. He also states that at the time Juana Díaz was found dead, there was no ordinary judge in the district, and that notice was given to Antonio Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, who was in the town of Cuamo, and he had arrived the following Monday. He concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he has declared, and that this is the truth under oath, and that he is about 80 years of age. He does not know how to write. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Late January 1695. This is the testimony of Juan de Santiago, a resident of the district of Ponce and one of the men appointed to assist in the Coastal Guard under the authority of Juan Colón de Torres, lieutenant of war, captain of the Valley of Cuamo. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, he states the following. Juan de Santiago says that on Saturday, the 22nd of the current month, he was ordered to go investigate reports of 2 vessels that had appeared at the mouth of the Pastillo Inlet. He went there with those who could attend and arrived around 3 in the afternoon, remaining on guard until Sunday night, the 23rd. He states that on Saturday night, around 1 o'clock, several people requested permission from him to leave the post. Among them were Juan, a black enslaved man belonging to Blas de la Candelaria, as well as Francisco Muñoz de Olivencia, Francisco de Santiago, and Tomás de Rivera, all residents of the district. Juan de Santiago says that he granted them leave, and they all departed. On Sunday, after receiving word that the vessels were French traders, he dismissed the remaining men and returned to his house. He states that he has no knowledge and has heard no report concerning who killed Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de León. He says only that he heard that she had been found dead on Sunday, and that on Monday, the 24th, he arrived at her house together with Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad. There, he says he saw a kitchen bloodied, a pestle stained with blood, a rope or halter also bloodied, which they said had been around her neck. After this, he accompanied the alcalde to the town of San Germán. Juan de Santiago is then asked whether Domingo de León, the husband of the deceased, and Valerio de León, his brother, were present on guard duty at the Pastillo Inlet and how long they remained there. He states that both men were present on Saturday, and then on Sunday, around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, he dismissed them along with Alonso Delgado and Jacinto Montañez. He adds that on that occasion, they brought 2 hogs for their household, which had been enclosed in the pasture pen, and that the hogs belonged to Pedro de Alvarado. He is further asked whether he knows who committed the crime, or whether Domingo de León and Juana Díaz lived in friendship or had troubles with any person from which suspicion might arise. He responds that he does not know, and that he lives far away from where the death occurred, and that he has heard nothing further. He concludes by stating that he knows nothing else beyond what he has already declared, and that this is the truth under oath, and that he is about 27 years of age. He does not know how to write, and with that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Late January 1695. This is the testimony of Francisco de Santiago, a resident of the district of Ponce, and at this time, one of the detainees held in this case. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn to promise to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause, he states the following. Francisco de Santiago says that on Saturday, the 22nd of the current month, he was on coastal duty at the mouth of the Pastillo Inlet in the company of Juan de Santiago, who was in charge of the guard, along with other men, because 2 vessels had appeared offshore. He states that that same night he requested permission from Juan de Santiago to leave the post, and the permission was granted. He departed with the company of Tomás de Rivera, and together they went to the site of Capitanejo, after which Tomás de Rivera went to his own house, and Francisco de Santiago went to his. He further states that earlier, Juan, a black enslaved man belonging to Blas de la Candelaria, had departed, having been employed by the declarant to carry a bundle of tobacco for Francisco Muñoz de Olivencia and Francisco Bermudez, who lived in Cuamo. Francisco de Santiago says that the following Sunday, the 23rd, news had spread that Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, who lived at the site of Capitanejo on the side of the Rio de Jacagua, had been found dead. He states that he went to her house about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and that there were present Alferez Francisco de Alvarado, Jacinto de Rivera, Jacinto Montañez, Alonso Delgado, Sebastián de Morales, as well as Domingo de Leon and Valerio, his brother. He says that he saw Juana Díaz dead, with a wound to her head, and a halter had already been removed from her neck, and that there was a pestle stained with blood nearby. Considering that it was necessary to inform the authorities, he volunteered to do so, stating that he knew the roads. He was given a horse and set out to locate the authorities. Francisco de Santiago said that he went first towards the site of the council, where Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, had his assistant. But upon arriving at the house of Simón Cordero and Barbara Ramos, he was told that the alcalde had gone to the valley of Guamo. He then continued to that valley and found Antonio de Torres that same afternoon, near sunset, at the house of Nicolas Rodriguez, his assistant, and informed him of the case. He states that the following Monday, Antonio de Torres returned with him to the house of Juana Díaz, arriving around 11 or 12 o'clock, and that afterwards, Domingo de Leon and Valerio were arrested and a certain judicial proceedings were carried out. When questioned further, Francisco de Santiago states that he does not know from whom the halter belonged, nor whether from the house it came, and he does not know who the aggressor or killer was. He states that whatever he had seen the husband and wife together, they lived peacefully, without quarrels or jealousy. He is also asked whether Valerio is enslaved or free. He responds that whenever he has seen Valerio working on his own account, that everyone considers him free, although Pedro de Alvarado claims that Valerio belongs to Maria de Gracia, and that he does not know whether this claim is based on authority or truth. Francisco de Santiago concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he declared, and that this is the truth under oath, and that he is about 30 years old, he does not know how to write. And with that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Late January 1695. This is the testimony of Tomás de Rivera, a resident of the district. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, he states the following. Tomás de Rivera says that on Sunday, the 23rd of the current month, the day Juana Díaz was killed, he had gone to look for hogs in order to slaughter one and to look for his sister, Maria de Gracia, so that she might go with him to the valley of Guamo, which he did. He states that afterward, he heard it said publicly that Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, had been found dead. He says that he did not see her, that he did not go to her house, and that he does not know who killed her, nor does he have any knowledge on the matter. He further states that on the previous day, Saturday, he had been at the mouth of the Pastillo Inlet, guarding a boat that had appeared there. That same day, he returned home with permission from the corporal, in the company of Francisco de Santiago, and arrived late that night, having left late. Tomás de Rivera is then asked whether he knows whether Valerio de Leon, brother of Domingo de Leon, is free or enslaved, and whether there had been any disputes between husband and wife, or whether they lived well together, or whether they had any dealings with other persons from which death may have arisen. He responds that he knows Valerio had been enslaved, and that his sister, Maria de Gracia, purchased him through Luis Sanchez. He further states that Pedro de Alvarado later freed him and granted him his liberty, and that Valerio is considered free, working as such at the site of Capitanejo, together with his brother Domingo de Leon. As to the remainder of the questions, Tomás de Rivera states that he does not know, and that the husband and wife lived very peacefully, in friendship and conformity. He concludes by stating that he knows nothing more beyond what he already declared, and that this is the truth under oath, and that he is about 80 years old and he does not know how to write. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring on the next witness. January 30th, 1695. This is the testimony of Sebastián de Morales, a resident of the district and neighbor of the valley of Guamo. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, he states the following. Sebastián de Morales says that on Sunday, the 23rd of the current month, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where he was in his own house, he was sent for and told that Valerio de León should be called, together with Diego, a younger brother of Francisco de Santiago, because Juana Díaz was dead. Upon receiving the notice, he went to the house where she lived. There, he found her lying between a wooden enclosure of the house and the kitchen, which was elevated. He states that he observed marks on her neck, which appeared to indicate that a rope or halter, and that also a large wound on her head. He says that when he asked those present how it happened, they responded that they did not know. At that time, they showed him the halter, stained with blood, and also a hand-sized club, likewise stained with blood. Sebastián de Morales states that Francisco de Santiago then said it was necessary to report the matter to justice. A horse was brought, and Francisco de Santiago departed to locate Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, who was staying at the Valley of Guamo, and returned with him on Monday at 11 or 12 o'clock. He further states that same Sunday afternoon, the body of the deceased was shrouded, and then they carried her to be buried at the holy church of that town. He says that he was among those who helped carry her. He lists those present in the house as Francisco de Alvarado, Jacinto Montañez, Jacinto de Rivera, Francisco Muñoz de Olivencia, Alonso Delgado, Domingo de León, husband of the deceased, and Valerio, his brother. When questioned further, Sebastián de Morales states that he did not take notice whether the kitchen could be seen from the pen where the hogs were enclosed that day. He also states that the husband and wife lived well together, without enmity or disputes with each other or others, and that he has no knowledge or suspicion who might have caused the death, except for maybe Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera. He further states that he does not know whether Valerio is enslaved or free, and that he has seen Valerio sometimes working in the house of Pedro de Alvarado and at other times living with his brother. Finally, Sebastián de Morales states that he has no knowledge that Domingo de León, Valerio, Diego Garcia, Domingo, Pedro, or Nicholas had previously been imprisoned for crimes. He adds that Felipe, an enslaved man of Jacinto de Rivera, is known to be a fugitive, and that he has been sentenced to death by royal justice for a prior crime involving the forced entry into the house of a married mulata woman named Juana de Jesus, which this declarant says he personally witnessed some months earlier. Sebastián de Morales concludes by stating that he knows nothing further beyond what he has declared, and that this is the truth under oath, and he is about 32 years of age. He does not know how to write. And with that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Late January 1695. This is the testimony of Nicolas Blas, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to Antonio de Torres, resident of the site of Capitanejo. Nicolas Blas is brought before the court, and the torture post is shown to him, so that he will declare the truth in this cause. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal proceeding, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Nicolas Blas says that what he knows regarding the death of Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de León, is that on Sunday, the 23rd of the current month, about 3 in the afternoon, news spread that she had been found dead. Upon hearing this, he went to his mistress, Maria Ruiz, to the house where Juana Díaz lived. There, he saw the deceased woman, and he observed blood in the yard of the house on top of some tiles. A short while later, he states they brought her from there to be buried in the town of Ponce. He says that the people who were present showed him a rope from which they said they had found untied around her neck. He states that he does not know who killed her, nor does he presume who the wrongdoer may have been. Nicolas Blas is then asked about the rope that had been shown to him. The rope is brought before the court, bloodstained, having been taken from the house where Juana Díaz lived. After seeing it, he states that he recognized it as the same rope that was shown to him on that day, with the same bloodstains. He says that that rope is used for tying donkeys, small in thickness, and that in the house of Domingo de Leon there was a loose male donkey. He is further asked whether Valerio de Leon, brother of Domingo de Leon, is free or enslaved. He responds that he does not know because although he has seen Valerio on some occasions assisting in the house of Pedro de Alvarado, working together with his brother Domingo, raising pigs and cultivating tobacco, he does not know whether Valerio to have a master or to be subject to one. He is also asked whether from the corral where the pigs are enclosed, which is outside the palisade of the house, one can see the kitchen of the house where Juana Díaz lived. He responds that from the gate of the palisade, the kitchen can be seen. When other questions relevant to the case are put to him, Nicolás Blas states that he has declared the truth and that he knows nothing further, and that this is affirmed under oath he took. He states that the general laws do not apply to him and that he is about 20 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write, and as the sign of signature, he marks the mark he customarily uses to brand livestock for his mistress. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Late January, 1695. This is the testimony of Pedro Bermudez, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to Lázaro Bermudez, at the time in the charge of Domingo Garcia, resident of the place of Capitanejo. Pedro Bermudez is brought before the court and the torture post is shown to him so that he may declare the truth concerning the death of Juana Díaz. From him, the court receives an oath by God and the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Pedro Bermudez says that what he knows concerning the matter is that he sold the value of a pair of shoes to Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, in exchange for a pig that she sold him. He states that on Thursday, the 20th of the current month, he came to the town of Ponce to the house of Francisco Barbosa, who gave him a new pair of Cordovan shoes. He then delivered those shoes to Domingo de Leon for his wife Juana Díaz, who was present, along with Valerio, her brother-in-law, and Pedro Garcia Correa, in the house where they lived in Capitanejo. He states that afterward, he went to the house of Domingo Garcia, and that the following Friday, the 21st, he went with them to the site of Pastillo, arriving around 10 in the morning to serve as guards because 2 boats had been found there. He says that they were under the charge of Juan de Santiago, and he remained there until Sunday, the 23rd, leaving around 4 in the afternoon and returning to his house. Pedro Bermudez states that after arriving home, they barely had time to untie their horses when they heard the news that Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, had been found dead in her house and that her body had already been taken to Ponce to be buried. He says that he does not know who killed her and that he has not heard it said, and that he has no knowledge of disputes, jealousies, or disagreements between husband and wife, whom he says lived united and well married. He is then showed a rope or neck cord, stained with blood in some places, and asked whether he recognizes it, and whether he had seen it before, or whether it is a donkey rope or any other kind. He responds that on Monday, the 24th, he saw this rope when Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, ordered certain persons to be sent. But what he does not know, whether it was specifically a donkey rope, noting that it was not well twisted. He is further asked where Juana Díaz lived, whether she had a donkey or a horse, and whether the rope shown could have served either animal. He responds that the household had both a tame donkey and a horse, and that the rope could have been used for either. Pedro Bermudez is also asked whether Valerio, brother of Domingo de Leon, is free or enslaved, and whether from the pig corral outside the palisade of the house can the kitchen where Juana Díaz was found be seen. He responds that he knows Valerio to be enslaved to Pedro de Alvarado, and that the last time he saw him afterward in the house of his brother working on a tobacco plot. He says that from the pig corral one cannot see the kitchen, and that from the door of the palisade one can see it, though not entirely. When other questions relevant to the case put to him, Pedro Bermudez states what he has declared to be true. He affirms that general laws do not apply to him, and that he is about 29 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write, and his master signs on his behalf. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 1st, 1695. This is the testimony of Domingo Cintron, a black enslaved man belonging to Alonso Delgado, resident of the site of Capitanejo. Domingo Cintron is brought before the court, and the torture post is shown to him, so that he may tell the truth concerning the death of Juana Díaz. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Domingo Cintron says that on Sunday, the 23rd of January, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he had left his house and went to the home of Magdalena Rodriguez, where her husband usually stayed. There, he was told by Juan, an enslaved man belonging to Blas de la Candelaria, that Magdalena's husband had gone to look for a horse in Sabana Llana, accompanied by Juan. Domingo Cintron said that he continued on his way, going to gather yaguas to roof the kitchen of his master Alonso Delgado. Afterward, while crossing the ford of the Rio Jacagua, he encountered Jacinto de Rivera, who was on the lower bank of the river drying his clothes. When asked what he was doing there, Jacinto de Rivera told him that he had washed his clothes because the woman of Capitanejo had accused him badly, saying that he was cooking salted meat and that he had taken away his donkey and kept it. Domingo Cintron states that Jacinto Rivera dressed himself there and that the two then walked towards this other side of the river. As they entered the wooded area, they encountered Domingo de Leon and his brother Valerio, where they were driving pigs ahead of them towards their house. Speaking with them, Domingo and Valerio said they were coming from the inlet. Continuing on, Domingo Cintron said that they encountered Jacinto Montañez, who was carrying a skin-dead pig across the haunches of his horse and was heading towards his house. When they reached the place where the road divides, one path leading towards the house of Juana Mateos and the other towards the house of his master, Valerio suddenly returned, visibly distressed, and told them to go look for people because his sister, Juana Díaz, had been hanged. Domingo Cintron states that after hearing this, they all went together to the house where Juana Díaz lived. There, they saw her lying dead on some yaguas. He says that when her body was turned, he saw a large wound on the side of her head above the ear, from which blood was flowing, and he also saw a handle of a pestle bloodied at the end. He further states that a rope, likewise stained with blood, was shown to him and that he judged it to be old. He says that Francisco de Santiago arrived at the house shortly afterwards. Domingo Cintron states that he suggested to those present that everyone should pass one by one over the body, so that it might be known whether the killer was present, because he had heard that in other places the blood would flow again towards the guilty party. He further states that Francisco de Santiago was then sent to locate the alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, who was then at the Valley of Cuamo, and that the following day the alcalde arrived. Afterwards, the body of Juana Díaz was taken to be buried at the Holy Church of Ponce. When asked whether he knows of any quarrels, jealousy, disputes, or bad relations between Juana Díaz and her husband Domingo de Leon, or with any other person, Domingo Cintron responds that he has no knowledge of any such matters and has never heard anything of this matter. He further states that he does not know whether Juana Díaz was accustomed to being alone in her house, nor whether her husband left her alone when he went out. Domingo Cintron concludes by stating that what he has declared is the truth under oath. He further states that although he is a relative of Domingo de Leon, being his nephew, this relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. He states that he is about 50 to 60 years of age, does not know how to write, and makes his mark he customarily uses. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 3rd, 1695. This is the testimony of Francisco de Lamboy, priest of the Holy Church of Ponce, resident of that town and neighbor of the Valley of Cuamo. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause, he states the following. Francisco de Lamboy says that he personally saw Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, brought into the church, already dead, carried in a hammock, and already shrouded in a piece of white linen and a cloth, all of it stained with blood. He states that she was still bleeding from the wound on her head, which he observed with his own eyes. He says that she was buried in the Holy Church of Ponce about 9 o'clock in the morning, and on that day counted the 23rd of the previous month, and that while her body lay inside the church, people spoke openly about the death and what have inflicted upon her at the site of Capitanejo. He further states that some days before the death, he had gone to ask Francisco de Santiago for tobacco seeds or plants to transplant his own tobacco plot. Francisco de Santiago told him that Domingo de Leon, husband of Juana Díaz, had given him some seed out of goodwill because they were neighbors. Francisco de Lamboy states that when he later returned to ask again, Francisco de Santiago told him that Domingo de Leon had said that although he had already set aside seed for another friend, Juana Díaz herself had given it, and that Domingo told his wife that when she pledged her word to give something, she would give it, even if the seed had already been promised elsewhere. Francisco de Santiago told him that Juana Díaz herself handed him the seed, along with some other gourds, and that she knelt at his feet asking him to take it. He states that Francisco de Santiago left the house impatient and angry, and that Domingo de Leon told his wife to remain silent. Francisco de Lamboy then states that among the people, there were some reasons and presumptions discussed concerning the death. He says that he heard it said that Domingo Garcia was suspected by some, but that suspicion was weakened because Domingo de Leon and Juana Díaz lived properly as husband and wife, without quarrels, disturbances, separations, or public cause for suspicion, and that Valerio de Leon, brother and brother-in-law who lived with them, likewise gave no cause. He states that public rumor attributed motive to Francisco de Santiago because he had left the Pastillo guard post and because movements of certain persons on the days before and after were discussed publicly. He adds that it was publicly known that Domingo and Valerio de Leon were present in the inlet until Sunday near midday, after which they returned home driving hogs, and upon arriving found Juana Díaz dead. He states, by signs and circumstances spoken among the people, he believed that Francisco de Santiago could have been executed for the betrayal and atrocity suffered by Juana Díaz, if not for other surrounding circumstances that existed in the case. He is then asked whether he recognizes the halter or cord that witnesses stated had been around Juana Díaz's neck. He responds that he does not know it, does not know whose it is, and has never seen it before. He is asked whether he knows whether Valerio de Leon is enslaved or free. He responds that Valerio assisted his brother Domingo and worked with him in a tobacco plot, but that he does not know whether Valerio owed anything for his freedom, nor whether Pedro de Alvarado, who purchased him from Maria de Gracia, was owed anything. Francisco de Lamboy concludes by stating that what he has said is the truth under oath. He states that although the general provisions of the law apply to him, because he is a cousin of the deceased, this relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. He states that he is about 33 years old and he signs together with the alcalde. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 4th, 1695. This is the ratified testimony of Domingo Garcia, a free mulatto man, resident and neighbor of the site of Capitanejo. Domingo Garcia is brought before the court for the further justification and confirmation of what contained in this cause. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of the cause of the prior statements, having heard and understood them, he states the following. Domingo Garcia affirms that what is contained in his previous written statement is true and accurate exactly as it was written. He states that Domingo de Leon, husband of the deceased Juana Díaz, was present before him and questioned him insistently about the death, because this declarant is his maternal cousin. Domingo Garcia responded that he did not know how the death occurred, because there had been no discord between Domingo de Leon and his wife, and that this peaceful state of marriage was known publicly. He states that what he can add is that Francisco de Santiago, his nearest and most immediate neighbor, came to his house to ask for a tobacco seed to plant in his own plot, and that he gave it to him willingly and with pleasure. He says that Francisco de Santiago later returned to ask for more seed, stating that it was needed for another person living elsewhere, to whom it had been promised. Nevertheless, he took it, and in the presence of Juana Díaz, his wife said, "Go plant your seed, and with it you shall live." And while saying this, he threw to the ground a container at the feet of the pack animal, breaking it. This, he states, was said by Domingo de Leon in the presence of Luis Sanchez and the assistant Miguel de Salinas. Domingo Garcia then states that he presumes that it could have been Francisco de Santiago who committed the crime, because it was publicly rumored that Francisco de Santiago had been among the first to leave the guard post at the mouth of the Pastillo Inlet on Saturday. He states that it is known by evidence that he himself remained there until Sunday, together with the rest of the people, including Domingo de Leon and his brother Valerio, and that they did not leave until midday, whereas Francisco de Santiago left Saturday night, returned shortly after to Capitanejo, and at that time, Francisco de Santiago and Tomás de Rivera departed together. He states that this is what he knows concerning the matter, and that Diego Garcia also knows facts touching this case. When asked whether he knows or has noticed that Francisco de Santiago had disputes or quarrels with others, he responds that he had heard generally, without recalling names, that Francisco de Santiago once went out at night in the valley of Guamo, where he beat an artilleryman with sticks, and afterward went to search for cattle in the city of Puerto Rico, where he is a resident and property holder. He states that this occurred more than a year earlier, and that he does not know the cause, and that although he heard this in conversation, he did not believe it because he saw no proof. He is then asked whether Valerio de Leon is enslaved or owes any amount concerning his freedom. He states that in recent days he spoke to Valerio, and that Diego Garcia told him Valerio still owes a few reales. Later, Valerio told him himself that he owed 8 pesos to Pedro de Alvarado, and he does not know whether Valerio has been sued for payment. When other questions touching the case are put to him, Domingo Garcia states that he knows nothing further beyond that what he has already declared, and that this is the truth under oath. He states that he is about 45 years of age, more or less, although the general laws apply to him because he is the paternal uncle of Domingo de Leon and Valerio de Leon. This relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. As a sign of signature, he makes the brand mark he customarily uses for his livestock. With that, the court takes his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 4th, 1695. This is the ratified and supplemental testimony of Diego Garcia, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to Maria de Gracia, under the authority of Francisco de Torres, resident of this district. Diego Garcia is brought before the court. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and the instrument of torture is shown to him, so that he may speak the truth. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, he states the following. The court orders that the prior declaration of Domingo Garcia be read aloud to him. Having heard it and understood it, Diego Garcia states that everything contained in the declaration is true, accurate, and well written. He says that what Domingo Garcia declared concerning Domingo de Leon, who is imprisoned for the death of his wife, Juana Díaz, is correct, and that what was spoken in the presence of Luis Sanchez and the assistant Miguel de Salinas. He states that this is what he knows concerning the matters touched upon that declaration. He is then asked whether he knows or has noticed that Francisco de Santiago has, on some occasion, shown agitation or intemperance, whether in words or in actions, from which quarrels have arisen. Diego Garcia responds that he has heard that in the valley of Guamo, Francisco de Santiago encountered Sebastián Garcia, an artilleryman in the city of Puerto Rico, and that on some occasion he beat him with sticks. He states that this occurred more than a year earlier, and that at some time there were rumors in the district that someone here have done it, but he does not know whether if it was Francisco de Santiago. When further questions touching the case are put to him, Diego Garcia adds that Juana Díaz was a slave of Maria de Gracia as he understands it. He further states that Francisco de Santiago had words of dispute and heavy quarrels with Juana Díaz, now deceased, and that the disputes were made known to her. He states that this occurred before she was killed, and that he declares this now before this court because he could not attend earlier, being distanced from the town affected with ailments that prevented him from appearing in person. Diego Garcia affirms this as the truth under oath. He states that he is about 36 years of age and that the general laws apply to him. He is the paternal uncle of Domingo de Leon and Valerio de Leon, which relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. As a sign of signature, he makes the brand mark he customarily uses with his master's cattle. And with that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 4th, 1695. This is the testimony of Miguel de Salinas, assistant, resident of the district, and neighbor of the town of San Germán. Miguel de Salinas is brought before the court as a cited person. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Miguel de Salinas says that he has notice of the criminal proceedings concerning the death of Juana Díaz, but he does not know how the death occurred, nor does he know who the malefactor was. He states that the prior declaration, which has been read aloud to him, are shown as true, certain, and well written, and that the events occurred exactly contained therein. He specifies that this declaration was made by Domingo de Leon, husband of the deceased, while he was in prison, and that the declarant, Miguel de Salinas, was present when the statement was given, along with other persons whose names he does not recall. Miguel de Salinas says that this is what he knows regarding what touches upon the declaration. He is then asked whether he has heard it said or has noticed that Francisco de Santiago, resident of the site of Capitanejo, once left his house at night, went to the valley of Guamo, where Sebastián Garcia, an artilleryman from the city of Puerto Rico, was present buying cattle, and that in the ravine of the plains, Francisco de Santiago beat him with sticks, afterward returning to his house before dawn. Miguel de Salinas responds that he has heard it widely rumored that in the district that Sebastián Garcia was beaten with sticks in the valley of Guamo, but he does not know who struck them, nor the cause of the beating, and that's all he could say in the matter. When further questions touching the case are put to him, Miguel de Salinas states that he knows nothing more than what he has already declared. He affirms that this is the truth under oath, that the general laws do not apply to him, and that he is about 37 years of age, more or less. He does not sign. The alcalde signs before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. By early February 1695, the investigation reaches a critical moment. The court has reviewed the declarations already taken concerning the death of Juana Díaz. Although many witnesses have been examined, none of the testimony on its own has been sufficient to impose punishment. Because of this, the court orders that all persons who had been detained up to this point be released, including Domingo de Leon, husband of the deceased, and Valerio de Leon, his brother. Both men, who had remained in prison during the early phase of the inquiry, are granted license and freedom, but the case does not close. From the same declarations, the court determines the grave culpability has arisen against Francisco de Santiago. The record states that he was the person who left the guard post at the mouth of the Pastillo Inlet on the first Saturday night, while the others remained until Sunday, the very day on which Juana Díaz was killed. The court further notices that Francisco de Santiago was one of the neighbors closest to the house where the deceased lived. Because of this, Francisco de Santiago is ordered arrested. He is taken into custody and placed in the jail where Domingo and Valerio de Leon had previously been held, under good guard and security, with instructions that all three be sent to the Villa of San Germán and delivery to the royal jail there, so that the case may proceed with further examination. At the same time, the court orders that all goods belonging to Francisco de Santiago be seized and placed into judicial deposit according to the custom and legal form. The order is signed. 2 days later, on February 6, 1695, the alcalde personally goes to the site of Capitanejo, accompanied by assistants and residents of the district. There, Francisco de Santiago is formally arrested, brought under escort to the jail where Domingo and Valerio de Leon are being held, and placed under guard of a corporal. The court determines, due to lack of security in the district, scarcity of guards, and general disorder, all 3 prisoners must be transferred to the royal jail of the Villa of San Germán, where they can be closely and securely prosecuted and examined. Orders are issued to their immediate transport under guard. That same day, Alferez Francisco de Alvarado is formally notified of the court's decision in person, in the presence of the alcalde and witnesses. The case now moves out of the countryside and into the royal jail. Bring in the next witness. February 6, 1695. This is the testimony of Luis Sanchez de Rivera, a resident of this district. Luis Sanchez de Rivera is brought before the court. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. And having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenor of this criminal cause, having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Luis Sanchez de Rivera says that it is known by hearsay and public knowledge that Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, was killed and found dead in the kitchen in the house where she lived, at the site of Capitanejo. He states that at this time this occurred, he was not present in the district because he was then in the valley of Cuamo, and that he returned from there together with Antonio de Torres, alcalde of the Santa Hermandad. He says that they arrived back in the district on Monday around midday, which was another day after the death. He further states that the rope shown to him in the court is true and authentic, with accordance with how it is contained in the proceedings, and that the description of it was well written. He then declares that while Domingo de Leon was in prison, Domingo stated that he had pulled up a tobacco plant from the plot where his seedbed was located, and that he gave that plant to Francisco de Santiago, telling him that the plant had been promised to another person. As a result of this exchange, the plant was thrown at Francisco de Santiago's feet, and Domingo stated that with it he lived. Luis Sanchez de Rivera states that when Domingo de Leon made the statements in jail, Domingo Garcia was present, in addition to reasons already contained in prior declarations. He is then asked whether he recognizes the blood-stained rope that has been shown to him, whether he has seen it before, whether it was found around the neck of Juana Díaz when she was found dead, or whether he knows whose rope it is. He responds that he does not know the rope, that he has never seen it before on any other occasion, and he did not see it around Juana Díaz's neck, and he does not know anything about who it belongs to. When other questions relevant to the case are put to him, Luis Sanchez de Rivera states that he knows nothing further beyond what has already been declared, and that this is the truth under oath. He states that he is about 33 years of age, more or less, and he signs together with the alcalde. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. February 18th, 1695. The case reaches the royal jail of San Germán. On this day, Domingo de Leon is brought out of his cell. He is a black man, a resident of the district of Ponce, living at the site of Capitanejo. He is a widower. His wife, Juana Díaz, is dead. Domingo de Leon is placed before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde of the ordinary judge of this town and its jurisdiction. The confession is taken inside the public jail in the presence of the court clerk. He is sworn by God and by the sign of the cross. He promises to tell the truth. Domingo de Leon identifies himself. He states his name, his place of residence, and his condition. He says that he lived by his labor, by the sweat of his work in the countryside. He says that he is about 26 years of age. He confirms that on Sunday afternoon, January 23rd, he arrived at his house from El Pastillo, driving a herd of pigs together with Valerio, his brother, and Alferez Francisco de Alvarado. There, in the kitchen of his house, they find his wife, Juana Díaz, dead. The court asked the central question. He's asked directly, who killed Juana Díaz? Domingo de Leon responds that he doesn't know, but he says that he suspects and presumes that a man named Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera. He explains that Felipe had previously been imprisoned in this town and sentenced to death, but he had escaped from jail. He says that after Felipe escaped, linen cloth went missing from his house, cloth that Domingo had purchased to make clothing. He states that he later found Felipe beneath his house, reprimanded him, and demanded that the linen be returned or paid for. He says that he reported this to the alcalde, but it was told that Felipe had not stolen it and that diligence would be made to look for him. Domingo de Leon said that he believes that Felipe committed this murder because of this grievance and because Felipe had previously committed other violent crimes, including the attempted violation of Juana de Rivera and the assault on Juana de Jesus, a free and married mulata woman. Domingo de Leon states that he saw Felipe at the mouth of El Pastillo, where guards were stationed because two vessels had appeared. He says that Felipe was present among the guards, and he suspected him because of the theft and his conduct, and when he asked permission to leave his post and return home in case Felipe disappeared. Permission was denied. Domingo de Leon says that Francisco de Santiago left the guard post that night with Tomás de Rivera and others that followed. Domingo says that he and Valerio remained on guard until Sunday and then returned home around midday driving pigs. He says that at the river crossing, they encountered Jacinto de Rivera and an enslaved man named Domingo, and that Jacinto told him about stolen property and disturbances in the district. He says that on other occasions when he left his house, he always tried to leave his wife accompanied, but on this occasion he could not because he and Valerio were taken suddenly to the guard post. He says that he did not suspect such a thing could happen. Domingo de Leon states that he arrived at his house around 3 in the afternoon. Shortly afterward, Alferez Francisco de Alvarado arrived. He says, while tying the donkey and placing the pigs in the corral next to the kitchen, he saw his wife laying there, her face covered in blood. He entered the kitchen and saw that her body was bloodied, and there were wounds at the side of her neck, and flies and maggots were present, and the cord was tightly wound around her neck, double twisted. He states that there was a struggle to remove it because it was so tight. He says that the alcalde of the Santa Hermandad was in the valley of Cuamo, and that Francisco de Santiago was sent to go look for him, and that he did not return until the next day because he was far from his estates. Because of this, Juana Díaz was taken and buried at the Holy Church of Ponce. Domingo de Leon is questioned about the cord, about disputes, about Francisco de Santiago, about Valerio's status, about tobacco seedings, and about rumors circulating the district. He states repeatedly that he does not accuse Francisco de Santiago, that they lived as brothers and friends, and that there have been no ill will between them. He confirms that Valerio had been enslaved by Pedro de Alvarado, but had nearly paid his full value and lived freely with him and his brother. Finally, Domingo de Leon states that he does nothing more to add, that this confession has been read to him, and that it was written well, and that he affirms it under oath. He does not know how to write. He makes his mark. Bring in the next witness. February 18th, 1695. Inside the royal jail of San Germán, the court takes another confession. On this day, Valerio de Leon is brought before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde and ordinary judge of the town and its jurisdiction. The confession is taken inside the public jail in the presence of the court notary. Valerio de Leon is sworn by God and by the cross. He promises to tell the truth. He states that his name is Valerio de Leon, brother of Domingo de Leon, and that he is imprisoned in the public jail of this town. He says that he is a native of the Valley of Cuamo, resident at the site of Ponce, living in the territory of Capitanejo, in the house of his brother Domingo. He states that he is a slave of Pedro de Alvarado, who bought him from Maria de Cintron for 309 pesos, and that Pedro de Alvarado gave him leave to seek his own livelihood, turning over what he had earned. He says that he is about 20 years of age, more or less. He is asked about Sunday, January 23rd, and what he knows concerning the death of Juana Díaz, wife of his brother Domingo. Valerio de Leon states that he does not know who killed her, nor for what reason. He says that when they found her dead, it was about 3 in the afternoon. He explains that he had returned to the house of his brother from El Pastillo, where they had been standing guard over vessels in the mouth of the inlet. He returned in the company of Domingo de Leon, Jacinto Montañez, and Alonso Delgado, with license granted by Juan de Santiago, Cabo of the Guard. Valerio states that on Saturday, January 22nd in the morning, he and his brother were summoned by the Cabo and compelled to go to the guard post, despite their reluctance, because 2 vessels had appeared at the mouth of El Pastillo. He says they arrived and remained there without leaving until Sunday, as previously stated. He further states that on Saturday night, with license from the Cabo, several men left the post: Francisco de Santiago, Tomás de Rivera, Juan, mulatto enslaved by Blas de la Candelaria, and Francisco Muñoz de Olivencia. Valerio states that they returned Sunday, driving pigs ahead of them. He was among the first to see Juana Díaz dead, along with his brother Domingo. At that moment, Alferez Francisco de Alvarado was also present. Valerio says that Alvarado came to bring winding cloth for a chair of the deceased and to take measurements in order to make a cushion. They entered the palisade and found Juana Díaz lying dead in the kitchen, very bloodied. He states that the cause appeared to be that she had been struck and strangled with a cord which she had around her neck, looped. He states that Alferez Francisco de Alvarado removed the cord with effort because it was very tight and knotted. Valerio is asked whether he has knowledge or suspicion who committed the crime. He responds that he has no knowledge and no suspicion of any person. He is then asked whether while standing guard at El Pastillo, he saw Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, who was fleeing justice and had been condemned to death in the town prior for crimes and for breaking out of jail. Valerio states that he did see Felipe on Saturday while standing guard. He said he heard Felipe say that he was going on his own to remove the shackle from his leg, claiming that by doing so, he was carrying out justice. He states that he did not see Felipe again until Sunday, around 11 in the morning, when Felipe appeared again among the people. Valerio recounts that while on guard, Gregorio Velasquez, resident of Guamo, told Felipe publicly that he should have been hanged when he was previously found, and that they had not refrained from killing him only because he was not a thief. Felipe replied openly that he did not know how to do good, that he speared hogs, and that he was fleeing because he had wounded the sister of his master, Jacinto de Rivera, assaulted a man washing clothes in the stream, and forced Juana Díaz, a married mulatta woman. Valerio is asked who aids and harbors Felipe, allowing him to remain openly in the district. He responds that he does not know who aids him, but he has been seen Felipe by day and night, staying and being assisted in the house of Felipe Rodriguez, resident of Capitanejo, who is a first or second cousin of Jacinto de Rivera. He explains that neither he nor his brother informed justice because they were poor and alone, feared retaliation, and believes others would act. Seeing that no one did, they refrained and continued with their labor. Valerio is asked about the cloth allegedly stolen from his brother and Juana Díaz. He states that he has knowledge that during the Feast of the Three Kings, while people were performing watches, Felipe was on guard and spoke again of removing his shackles. He does not add further detail concerning the cloth. He is asked whether his brother, while imprisoned, repeated suspicions against Francisco de Santiago. Valerio states that it is true that his brother repeated certain reasons, but that he himself never suspected Francisco de Santiago, and that the only prior dispute concerned a tobacco seedbed that had been uprooted because it encroached on the neighboring land, and that Francisco de Santiago had already been licensed to use it. He states that rumors circulated in the jail, spread by certain individuals, but that none of it was proven, nor did it persuade him. Valerio is asked whether he knows of any past violence or involvement by Francisco de Santiago that suggested guilt. He responds that he has no knowledge and that Francisco de Santiago was involved only in legal disputes and obligations, and at the present moment he was under the authority of Melchor de Aponte, a mulatto enslaved by Juan de Santiago. Valerio states that he has nothing more to add, that this confession has been read back to him, that it was well written, and that he confirms it under oath. Because he does not know how to write, another signs for him. The confession is signed by Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde. Bring in the next witness. Early 1695, in the town of San Germán, the investigation continues. On this day, the alcalde orders that Alferez Francisco de Alvarado, resident of this town and inhabitant of Ponce, appear again before the court. He is sworn by God and by the sign of the cross. He promises to tell the truth. The court asks him, in general terms, what notorious facts are contained in the record and what circumstances he knows concerning the death of Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, who remains imprisoned in the public jail. Francisco de Alvarado responds that he already given his declaration concerning the death. He then adds that he has since heard new information said publicly. He states that people there said that the rope or cord found around Juana Díaz's neck, the same cord that he himself removed, was recognized by Juana Delgado, daughter of Alonso Delgado, who said that it came from a donkey taken from her house and that the rope belonged to her father. He further states that some 11 or 12 days earlier, while speaking with Germán Sánchez about the death, Germán Sánchez told him that he had heard it said by other persons of roughly of the same age of Francisco that if the matter were pressed forward, they would have to torture the groom, and afterward he would say who had killed her. Francisco de Alvarado states that no name was given, nor was it made clear who they were referring to. He adds that he also heard it said publicly that there were arguments and disputes in the town, and that afterwards the alcalde left the town of Ponce with prisoners, whose lamentations were heard, including those of Maria de Cordero, a widow. The court then asks whether there are any elderly men in the site of Ponce who might know of the matter by reason of age or long memory. Francisco de Alvarado responds that he only knows a few: the assistant Melchor Trochi, Francisco Morales Cordero, Alonso Delgado, father of Juana Delgado, and Juan Ramirez, a mulatto, men he describes as being 70 to more than 80 years of age. He adds mention of a foreign mulatto named Lorenzo, jokingly said to be extremely old, but he states that he knows no others. He is then asked whether he knows or has heard that Francisco de Santiago, imprisoned in the public jail, had threatened Juana Díaz with a dagger over a rumored theft of cloth. Francisco de Alvarado responds that he has not heard such things, nor does he know them to be true. He states that he did hear lengths of cloth had been stolen some days before Juana Díaz was killed, but he does not know who took them, and that those who had lost them may have taken them themselves. He states that Juana Díaz and her husband discussed whether to seek censure, and that he advised against it, saying that censures were formally issued only to large sums, and that for something so small in value would be better to speak with the priest on the feast day when people would be gathered. He says that this conversation occurred among the three of them, and not stated as elsewhere. Finally, he is asked whether he knows people of ill conduct in the district who may have committed these crimes. He responds that he has no such knowledge of the matters, stating for the past 6 months he had lived with his nephew, Pedro de Alvarado, accompanied only in planting tobacco and attending to that labor. He concludes that he knows nothing more than what he has declared, affirms it under oath, and states that although general laws apply to him, and though Alferez Germán de Sanchez is his nephew, kinsman, and godson, this relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. Being 80 years of age, he makes his customary mark, the alcalde signs, the declaration is recorded. Bring in the next witness. March 3rd, 1695. This is the testimony of Juan de la Vega Negron, resident of the town of San Germán and inhabitant of the town of Ponce. Juan de la Vega Negron appears before the court after being summoned by written order of the alcalde. He explains that while traveling from the port of Guayanilla towards his home, on March 2nd, he was notified by Juan Josef, his brother-in-law, that Pedro Garcia Romero had gone to his house with a writ ordering him to appear before the court. Upon receiving this notice, he suspended his journey and came directly to San Germán to comply. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause concerning the death afflicted on Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de León, in the sight of Capitonejo, he states the following. Juan de la Vega Negron said that he has knowledge of the matter only because on the day Juana Díaz was killed, while traveling from a tobacco clearing that he worked on that day, he saw the corpse being carried to the burial. As he passed by, he asked Francisco de Alvarado what had occurred, and Alvarado told him that the wife of Domingo de León had been killed. He states that he has no notice or suspicion who may have committed the crime. He is asked whether he knows of any person in the district of bad living who may have committed crimes, of whether such persons receive aid or protection from neighbors. He responds that he has no knowledge of this, stating that he attends only his household and labor, working, supporting his wife and children. He is asked whether he heard it said that Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, had on various occasions stolen items of value, whether he struck Juana Ruiz, sister of Jacinto, whether he was washing clothes at the stream, striking her in the head and shoulders, dragging her by the hair until Barbara Ramos had intervened, and whether he knows that Felipe had been imprisoned in the jail of San Germán and later escaped. Juan de la Vega Negron responds that he had heard it said that Felipe had forced a married mulata woman, and they had heard that Felipe had been apprehended in the district of Ponce, brought to San Germán and imprisoned, and that he broke out of jail and escaped. He further heard it said publicly that Felipe had been condemned to death in absentia for this rebellion. As to the remainder of the question, he states that he does not know directly, and if he has heard, he does not recall it. He is asked whether after these events he has seen Felipe again, knows where he stays, or knows who assists him and shelters him. He responds that he has not seen him, does not know where he stays, and has no notice of who may be assisting him. He is asked whether he knows of any verses or songs that were sung publicly in the district of Ponce concerning the death of Juana Díaz. He responds that around the 20th of the previous month, he went to a farm owned by Doña Barbara de Sandoval, widow of Alferez Domingo de Figueroa, to fetch yams for her. While there, Tomás, a black enslaved man belonging to that widow, told him that he had heard that Juan de la Vega knew of verses sung about Juana Díaz's death. Juan de la Vega responds that he had heard nothing, knew nothing of such verses, and asked that his name not be mentioned publicly or privately in connection to such matters. Tomás replied that he had only spoken it because he believed Juan de la Vega knew something. He is then asked whether he knows or suspects that Francisco de Santiago, who is imprisoned in the public jail of San Germán, participated in the killing of Juana Díaz or was the aggressor. Juan de la Vega Negron responds that he does not know anything and does not suspect Francisco de Santiago or does not believe that he was the aggressor. He states that he knows him to be an honorable man, that in all dealings he had with Francisco de Santiago has conducted himself well, and that he has never heard anything on the contrary. When other questions relevant to the case are put to him, Juan de la Vega Negron states that he knows nothing more than what he has already declared. He affirms that this is the truth under oath, and that general provisions of the law do not apply to him, and that he is about 24 years of age, more or less. He signs together with the alcalde. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. March 5th, 1695. This is the testimony of Alferez Germán Sánchez de Sea, a resident of the town of San Germán, an inhabitant of the pueblo de Ponce. Alferez Germán Sánchez appears before the court under order of Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town and its jurisdiction, having been notified by commission through Pedro Garcia Romero to appear before the court as justified in this criminal cause concerning the death of Juana Díaz. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been examined in the tenure of the cause, having been read and shown the summary, and having heard and understood it, he states the following. Germán Sanchez says that a short time before, while he had gone out his house to look for nets to slaughter animals for his household, near the meat salting sheds of that year, 1 or 2 days earlier, he arrived at the salt works known as Los Yesos. From there, he proceeded into the road that leads towards Capitanejo. On that road, he encountered Diego, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to the heirs of Doroteo de la Vega, younger brother of Francisco de Torres and also Juan Ramirez, who was riding a donkey. He says that he heard them speaking among themselves about the death of Juana Díaz. He states that Juan Ramirez understood that someone had arrived at his house and told him that it was there that there would be no punishment for the death. Juan Ramirez responded that punishment would indeed remain because other matters had been lost and had not been discovered. He further stated that if he were caught at the post and placed under torment or placed upon the donkey, he would tell the truth and that he would not wait for them to apply such measures. Germán Sanchez declares that he does not know who the person was, nor what his name may be. After hearing this exchange, he separated from them and returned to his home, while they continued on their way. He states that it is public knowledge that Juana Díaz was killed and that she was taken and buried in the holy church of that district. He affirms that this was what was contained in the summons issued to him to be true and accurate, exactly as written, and that he has also made these matters known to Francisco de Alvarado as referenced in the proceedings. He is asked whether he knows or has noticed in the district of all persons, white, mulatto, or black, of ill living who have committed offenses, fled from justice, or escaped from jail. He responds that he has no such notice of such persons, except that he knew that in that town there was a black man named Felipe enslaved to Jacinto de Rivera, who had been imprisoned in the jail of San Germán and escaped. He states that he had heard it said that Felipe had been sentenced to death by royal justice for the offense of forcing a married woman, but he does not know where Felipe is or where he can be found. He is asked whether he knows or has noticed that before being seized and imprisoned, the said Felipe, while in the district of Ponce, wounded Juana Ruiz, sister of Jacinto de Rivera, striking her in the head and shoulder and dragging her by the hair while she was washing in the stream until others intervened. He responded that he had heard this by Barbara Ramos, who was present when it occurred, and that it happened as described. He is asked whether, after the alcalde departed from Ponce, that there were counts of tents or quarterings on the road of Ponce towards Bucana, giving to understand who the aggressor or killer of Juana Díaz might be. He responds that he has no notice of this and knows nothing of such matters. He is asked whether Francisco de Santiago, prisoner in the public jail of San Germán and resident of Capitanejo, has had disturbances, riots, or tendencies towards discord, or whether he is a good neighbor. Germán Sanchez responds that he knows Francisco de Santiago, considers him a good and honest man of good conduct, and that he has never heard anything to the contrary. When other questions touching the case are put to him, Germán Sanchez states that he knows nothing more beyond what he has declared. He affirms that this is the truth under oath, and that although he is related to Francisco de Santiago and Jacinto de Rivera, this relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. He states that he is about 44 years of age, more or less, and he signs together with the alcalde. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. March 11th, 1695. This is the testimony of Juan Ramirez, a resident of the town of San Germán, an inhabitant of Ponce. Juan Ramirez appears before the court before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde of the town and its jurisdiction, for the jurisdiction of what is contained in this criminal cause. From him, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross, and having sworn and promised to tell the truth, he states the following. Juan Ramirez says that he has notice of what is contained in the cause by general report, having heard it spoken in the town of Ponce. He states that the citation read to him is true and genuine, exactly how it's written. He says that while traveling down the road, he spoke with Diego, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to the heirs of Doroteo de la Vega, minors of Francisco de Torres. And at that time, he expressed to Diego the same reasons that are contained in the citation. He states that he holds these matters to be certain. He is asked to declare who told him the statements contained in the citation. Specifically, who said that before placing someone upon the donkey and forcing him to declare who had killed Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, the truth would be extracted. Juan Ramirez responds that the person who told him was a mulatto man named Juan de la Candelaria, an enslaved person belonging to Blas de la Candelaria, resident of Cuamo, who assists and is in the service of Francisco de Santiago, prisoner in the public jail of this town. He states that Juan de la Candelaria assisted in the house in the site of Capitanejo, helping to tend to a tobacco plot that the mulatto held jointly with this declarant, on the land belonging to Miguel de Miranda, resident of the site of Bucanas. He says that this occurred for more than a month in the presence of Miguel de Miranda's wife and 3 daughters of Alonso Delgado, whose father was also present. One of the daughters was named Juana. The names of the other 2 he does not recall. Juan Ramirez states that during this time, he was urged repeatedly to declare who the killer of Juana Díaz was, but he did not give place to it, and that this is all he knows concerning that matter. He is then asked whether Juan de la Candelaria told him who the killer was, or whether he presumes or suspects any person as the aggressor. Juan Ramirez responds that he knows nothing beyond what he has already declared, and that he does not presume or suspect who may have committed the crime. He is asked whether he recognizes a halter or a rope that was shown to him, or whether he has seen it at any prior occasion in the town of Ponce, or is in the possession of any person. He responds that he does not know it, nor has he seen it before. When other questions relevant to the case are put to him, Juan Ramirez states that he knows nothing further than beyond what he has already declared. He affirms and ratifies this testimony under oath. He states that he is about 70 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write and makes his mark in place of a signature. The alcalde signs before him before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. March 26, 1695. This is the testimony of Juan, a mulatto enslaved man belonging to Blas de la Candelaria, resident of the district of Ponce. Juan is brought before the court in the town of San Germán before Guillermo de Lugo. He is sworn by God and the sign of the cross, and is shown the possibility of torture, so that he may tell the truth of what he knows. Having been examined in the tenure of this criminal cause, and having heard and understood the citations read to him, Juan states the following. He states while he was in Ponce, he heard of the bad rumors that were circulating against Francisco de Santiago. He says that when he went with Francisco de Santiago to cut water reed in order to build a tobacco shed, people spoke openly that another person had killed Juana Díaz, and it was not Francisco de Santiago. Juan says that when he later went to the town, people told him that he had been going to certain houses, including that of Simón de Cordero, where the same rumors against Francisco de Santiago were repeated, and where it was said that the man who had been found with Juana Díaz was responsible. He further states that he knows by having heard it that Domingo, a black enslaved man belonging to Alonso Delgado, said in the presence of Juana, daughter of Alonso Delgado, that about a month before the death, Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, told him and gave him to understand that Francisco de Santiago had offered him 50 pesos so that he would kill Juana Díaz, and that afterward he would give him something more so that he could finish curing his tobacco. Juan says that according to what Domingo stated, Felipe replied that he was poor and wandering, and he did not wish to kill her. To this, Francisco de Santiago allegedly responded that if Juana Díaz were found dead, he would pay him enough so that he could go to Cuamo for the feast of San Blas. Juan states that Domingo said this conversation occurred while Francisco de Santiago and Felipe were seated together on a thick pole of mora wood inside the tobacco shed of Francisco de Santiago, and that Juan himself passed between them while they were seated there. Juan further states that he knows, by having heard it, that Manuel de Sacia, a foreigner who was ill and residing in Capitanejo in the house of Domingo Garcia, said that he knew of the death of Juana Díaz because he had seen the killing. According to what Juan heard, Miguel de Sacia had gone to the house of Francisco de Santiago to ask for thread for male stockings, and being nearby saw the act, became afraid that he too would be killed, and fled crawling away. Juan also states that he heard Felipe, the enslaved man of Jacinto de Rivera, told him directly in the house of Alonso Delgado and in the presence of Alonso Delgado and his daughter Juana, that if he would have known beforehand, he would have not gone to the house of Francisco de Santiago to help build the tobacco shed. Juan says that when he replied that he was not a diviner to know what would happen, Felipe responded that Francisco de Santiago was the devil, because many things were known of him. This conversation ended when other people arrived. He further states that he heard that Domingo Garcia, sometime earlier, also knew matters concerning the death of Juana Díaz, but he did not want to involve himself, and that if he were summoned by justice, he would declare. Juan also states that he heard that Felipe, enslaved to Jacinto de Rivera, went to the presidio to confess that he had killed the wife of Felipe Rodriguez, in whose house he resided in Capitanejo on this side of the Rio Jacagua. He says that Felipe continued traveling with Julian Diaz, and that he heard it said that they did not wish to receive Felipe's confession in the Valley of Cuamo or in the Partido de Ponce because Felipe was a fugitive condemned by death by royal justice. Juan further states that he heard many people say, though he does not remember their names, that Francisco de Santiago once went out at nighttime at his house at Capitanejo, artilleryman in the city of Puerto Rico, in the plains of the Valley of Cuamo, and in that same night, he returned to his house. Juan says that he believes Sebastian Garcia was indeed struck because he's seen him alive afterward, but he does not know the motive, nor how the encounter occurred, except that it was said that he was attacked with a dagger. He adds that he had heard it said in the Partido de Ponce, people have been found dead and quartered at night, and some believed this is related to Sebastian de Torres, who lived in the Partido de Ponce in this town, but that he himself does not know this matter. Juan states that he knows nothing further beyond what he has already declared, that this is the truth under oath, and that if necessary, he will affirm it again and stand by what is written in this deposition. He states that although the general laws apply to him, and although he is the paternal uncle of the deceased, Juana Díaz, this relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. Because he doesn't know how to write, he makes the mark customarily used to brand the livestock. His master, Blas de la Candelaria, signs, as does Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde, before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. April 3rd, 1695. This is the supplemental testimony of Domingo Centron, a black enslaved man belonging to Alonso Delgado, previously examined in this cause. Domingo Centron is brought before the court in the town of San Germán. The instrument of torture is shown to him, and he is sworn by God and the sign of the cross. He promises to tell the truth. Having been informed in the tenure of this criminal cause concerning the death of Juana Díaz, and having had the citations and prior dispositions read aloud to him, he states the following. Domingo Centron says that what is contained in the first citation, located earlier in the proceedings, is true and certain, exactly as written. He confirms that Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, had been fleeing for crimes for some time prior to the death of Juana Díaz, and that Felipe himself told him this while they were together in the tobacco field, where Felipe arrived in the company of Pedro de Alvarado. He further states that concerning another citation, he knows what is written to be true because Felipe told him himself that Francisco de Santiago had offered him 50 pesos in order to kill Juana Díaz. He says that this conversation occurred while Jacinto Montañez was present in the house of Juan de Soto, and at the time, Domingo Centron was traveling towards Capitanejo. Domingo Centron then addresses another citation stating that Manuel de Sacia, a foreign tobacco grower, had killed Juana Díaz. He says that this information came from Jerónima, widow of Antonio Rodriguez, who told him this, but that he reported it to justice, not privately, and that he himself did not pursue it further, considering the woman to be of little judgment and therefore unreliable. He further confirms that although Francisco de Santiago was present when Juana Díaz's body was found, Francisco did not approach the body, nor did he touch it, but instead, he kept his distance and eventually offered to go look for the alcalde of the Santa Hermandad, who was in the town of Guamo. Domingo Cintron adds that when the body was found, the blood had already clotted, and that later, when the body was handled, blood drained out, which all were present and witnessed, and that Francisco de Santiago ceased handling the body at the time. He is then asked additional questions. Domingo Cintron states that he heard Juan, mulatto enslaved by Blas de la Candelaria, who was in the service of Francisco de Santiago, say publicly that Francisco de Santiago was guilty because he had been seen carrying plátano stalks at the time Juana Díaz was found dead. Domingo Cintron said that this was publicly spoken of and heard by many people. He further states that he has personal knowledge of Francisco de Santiago's conduct, having lived in his house for more than 4 years. He declares that Francisco de Santiago was known as a man with a bad life who caused damage to neighbors, killing hogs on various occasions to make lard and sending it to Puerto Rico, sometimes without punishment. He states that some of the hogs belonged to Alferez Josef Martín de Quiñones, others to Juan de Santiago, his brother-in-law, and that Francisco also killed 5 castrated pigs, 1 hog belonging to this declarant, and that they took a female donkey while he was in the service, along with other missing items. Domingo Cintron concludes by stating that this is the truth on the oath as he swore it, that he knows nothing further, and that nothing else pertains to him in this proceedings. He states that he is about 50 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write and makes his mark the way that he used earlier in his deposition. The alcalde signs before the notary. Bring in the next witness. Same day, 1695. This is the testimony of Domingo Garcia, a resident of the site of Ponce. Domingo Garcia is ordered to appear before the court of San Germán, before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town and jurisdiction. From him, before the notary, the court receives the oath by God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined according to the tenure and citation made by the summary of this cause, and having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Domingo Garcia declares that what is contained in the citation is not true, nor does he remember having said what is attributed to him there. He states that if he were called upon him to do so, he would say what he knows. He then adds, beyond what he has already declared, that the only thing that he can say is that he has heard it generally said by other neighbors of the site of Ponce that Francisco de Santiago was the one who killed Juana Díaz, and that no other rumors are circulating in that district. He states that he knows nothing else, that he suspects it bears ill will towards whoever may be the aggressor, naming Francisco de Santiago, but that he has no further knowledge on the matter. He affirms that this is the truth on the oath that he took, and that the general laws do not permit him to sign, that he is about 45 years of age, more or less. He does not sign because he does not know how. The alcalde signs before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. This is the testimony of Jacinto de Rivera, a resident of the district of Ponce and neighbor of this town of San Germán. Jacinto de Rivera is caused to appear before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde of this town, its district, and jurisdiction, for the greater justification of what is contained in the criminal cause. From him, before the notary, the court receives the oath of God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined according to the tenure and cause in the citations contained in this record, which are read to him word for word, and having heard and understood them, he states the following. Jacinto de Rivera says that he has knowledge of the contents of this case, because on that day Juana Díaz was killed, he was present with other persons and saw her in the bate of the house, lying over the yaguas that had been placed there as a shelter. He states that when he arrived, the halter or bridle that they said that the deceased had around her neck when she was already found dead had already been removed. He says that although they showed him the halter, he did not recognize it, nor does he know whose it was. He states that he has no knowledge who killed Juana Díaz, nor does he know who committed such an act. and that he has no suspicion of any person. He further states that what he knows regarding the citations and the letter inserted in the summary is that Domingo, a black enslaved man belonging to Alonso Delgado, and Diego, an enslaved man belonging to Maria de Gracia, made him understand the reasons contained therein. He explains that for many days he has not seen Felipe, the black enslaved man, nor has he had notice of him, because Felipe had gone away for certain crimes he committed, for which he was condemned to death by royal justice, and that he does not wish to know him. Jacinto de Rivera states that he denies having said, as appears in the citations, that Felipe had knowledge of the killing because he was not present. He explains that if he had said anything of the sort, it was only because he had heard it said publicly, as he has already declared. He adds that beyond this, what he knows is that while he was at the door of the church in the district of Ponce, the day of the Holy Week, he was speaking with Pedro Garcia Romero about the death of Juana Díaz. On that occasion, Pedro Garcia Romero told him that he had heard that the person who killed her came out strangling from her bed, and he gave him to understand, by inference, that Francisco de Santiago, who was then in prison, was the one who killed her. Jacinto de Rivera states that he knows the reasons by report, but that he does not know whether by certainty if Francisco de Santiago was the killer or not. He affirms that he knows nothing else beyond what he has already declared. He further states that when Juana Díaz was found dead, Francisco de Santiago did not arrive at the body in his presence, nor did he see him touch it. Jacinto de Rivera affirms that all of this is true and taken under oath. He states that although general laws apply to him, he has not ceased to tell the truth. He states that he is about 36 years of age, more or less, and he signs his name together with the alcalde before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. Same town, same day, 1695. This is the ratified testimony of Francisco Perez Roldan, neighbor of the town and resident of the district of Ponce, at the site of Tabaco. Francisco Perez Roldan appears before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of this town and its jurisdiction, and before the clerk. From him, the court receives the oath of God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, as cited as the witness in this cause, and having been examined according to the tenure in the case and the citation previously issued to him, which was read out loud to him word for word, and having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Francisco Perez Roldan says that he has knowledge of the death that was inflicted upon Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, in the district of Ponce, in the territory of Capitanejo, because he heard it spoken of publicly, but he does not know how it occurred. He states that the citations made to him are true and accurate, exactly as they are written in the record. He explains that he said it and gave it to understand these matters to Alonso Ortiz de la Renta, because while this declarant was at the site of Bucanas, in the house of Miguel de Miranda, a mulatto named Juan, enslaved to Pedro Garcia Romero, told him and made him understand that he knew who killed Juana Díaz. Francisco Perez Roldan further states that the same mulatto, Juan, said that another mulatto named Juan, enslaved to Blas de la Candelaria and under the charge of Francisco de Santiago, had let it be understood that Francisco de Santiago was the one who killed her. He explained that when he questioned this matter, he told the mulatto enslaved to Pedro Garcia Romero to consider how much a thing could be verified. His Grace, the alcalde, explained and made him understand the reasons referred in the citation, leaf by leaf, and that this was how the matter was insinuated and discussed with Alonso Ortiz de la Renta. He adds that he was negligent in not having reported it earlier that the mulatto Juan had appeared before His Grace to declare these matters on his own part, and that he had personal interest in the case because of the deceased and as brother of Domingo and Valerio de Leon. For this reason, he did not appear before the court until His Grace, the alcalde, ordered him to be summoned. He states that this was the only reason for the delay, and that he knows nothing else beyond what he has already declared. He affirms and ratifies this testimony as many times as the law permits, because this is the truth as taken under oath. He states that he knows nothing to add or take away. Francisco Perez Roldan states that the general laws do not apply to him, that he is about 55 years old, more or less, and that he does not know how to sign because he does not know how to write. He makes the mark he customarily uses to brand his major livestock. The alcalde signs before the notary. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. April 28th, 1695. This is the ratified testimony of Juan Lebron, a black enslaved man belonging to Pedro Garcia Romero, resident of the Partido de Ponce. Juan Lebron is ordered to appear before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town of San Germán and the district and jurisdiction. From him, before the clerk, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined according to the tenure of this criminal cause and the citation made to him, which was read out loud to be understood, he states the following. Juan Lebron declares that he has knowledge of the case because it is generally known that Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon and sister-in-law of the declarant, was killed. He states that the citation made to him is true and well written, exactly as it appears on record. He explains that what he knows concerning the matter occurred while he was in the Partido de Ponce, in the territory of San Anton, during the most recent Lent. On that day, he was in the house of Doña Sebastiana Colon, a widow, speaking with Doña Maria Colon, her daughter, about the death of Juana Díaz. Juan Lebron states that Doña Maria Colon told him that Pedro de Alvarado had said that the man who killed Juana Díaz did so alone, without accomplices, carrying a hakima in his hand. According to what was told to him, the aggressor seized Juana Díaz with the hakima, beat her, and pulled her from the bed where she was, fleeing with her until reaching the door of the kitchen, where she knelt and begged God not to allow him to kill her. Juan Lebron further states that according to what was related to him, Francisco de Santiago, who was imprisoned in the public jail of this town, was the one who killed her. He says that after the events already described, Francisco de Santiago drew the dagger he carried in his belt and with the vow he made, stabbed Juana Díaz and killed her. To ensure that she was dead, he then tied the end of the hakima tightly around her neck, thereby finishing strangling her. Juan Lebron declares that he knows nothing more about the matter beyond what he has already stated and what he has heard spoken of. He states that these are the same reasons he related to Pedro Garcia Romero, his master. He affirms that this is all the truth under oath as he has sworn it, and he ratifies it as many times as the law permits, and that if necessary, he will repeat it again. He states that he has nothing more to add or remove. He further declares that although the general laws affect Domingo and Valerio de Leon because they are brothers, the relationship has not caused them to depart from the truth. He states that he is about 42 years of age, more or less. He does not know how to write and therefore does not sign. The alcalde signs before the clerk. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. This is the cited and ratified testimony of Captain Pedro de Alvarado, resident of the town of San Germán. Captain Pedro de Alvarado is caused to appear before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of this town and its jurisdiction, for the further justification of the contents of this criminal cause, pursued ex officio by the royal justice concerning the death of Juana Díaz, wife of Domingo de Leon, in the district of Capitanejo, on this side of the Rio Jacagua. From him, before the court clerk, the court receives the oath by God and the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having been questioned and examined according to the tenor of this cause and the citations contained in the above recorded folio 102, which are read out loud to him and understood, he states the following. Captain Pedro de Alvarado declares that he has knowledge of this case only by general report, having heard it spoken of by many persons that Juana Díaz was killed in the house and territory where she lived. He states that he does not know who killed her, nor for what cause, nor has he come to know that there exists in the district of Ponce any aggressor or accomplice in the said crime. He explains that his lack of knowledge is because he is a man who concerns himself solely with attending to his estates and managing them, and that he does not involve himself in the affairs or conduct of others. He states that when he leaves his house, it's only to go to church or the district of Ponce to hear Mass, and then he returns home, without seeking to know or inquire into the lives or proceedings of the neighbors. He further states that at present, he serves as mayordomo of the Holy Church of the Valley of Guamo, and also at the Confraternity of Our Lady of the Pure Immaculate Conception and of the Sweet Name of Jesus. Concerning the citation against him, Pedro de Alvarado states that this is sinister, and that he denies having said what is written therein in the manner alleged. He explains that if on some occasion he said that one should not speak further on the matter, it was because, in his judgment, whoever killed Juana Díaz acted alone and would not present himself openly where he might be seen. He states that for this reason, had the contrary been declared, and it had been known who the killer was and whether he had assistance, much labor would have been avoided in justifying the matter until the truth were clarified, because of the fantastical confusions circulating among the neighbors. For this reason, he says that he has not given ear or credit to what people say. He adds that any person or persons cited concerning this matter may do what is proper and prove what this declarant has said and contained in this citation, and he protests that if it is not justified, he will request and repeat whatever is proper in law so that such atrocious acts may be punished. When other questions and re-questions touching the case are put to him, Captain Pedro de Alvarado states that he knows nothing more than beyond what he has already declared. He affirms and ratifies this testimony under oath that he has taken, and states that although general laws affect Francisco de Santiago, this has not caused him to depart from the truth. He states that he is about 46 years of age, more or less. As a sign of signature, he makes his customary mark, and the alcalde signs before the clerk. With that, the court records his testimony. Bring in the next witness. May 21st, 1695. This is the ratification of testimony of Miguel Rodriguez de Góngora, native of the Valley of Guamo and resident of the Partido de Ponce. Miguel Rodriguez de Góngora appears before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town of San Germán, for the purpose of ratifying the deposition he previously gave in this criminal case. From him, before the scribe, the court receives the oath of God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, and having had his prior deposition read and shown to him, and having heard it and understood it, he states the following. Miguel Rodriguez de Góngora declares that his prior deposition, located in folio 14 of the record, is true and truthful, and it is well written, and that the signature appearing there is his own, which he recognizes as such. He affirms this under the charge of the oath he has taken. He then adds further information. He states that Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, was in his company and in the company of other persons who were present in the Valley of Guamo at the time. He declares that Felipe slept there and associated with them until Sunday afternoon, when Felipe left that place together with the declarant at about 2 in the afternoon on the very day Juana Díaz was killed. He states that he knows this for certain. He further declares that what he presently knows, and states as a general matter, is that everyone says that Francisco de Santiago, who was held in the public jail of this town, was the killer, and no other. He is then asked whether he knows or has information concerning in whose house or in what place in the district of Ponce the said black man Felipe received assistance, and whose charge he was, or who encouraged or aided him, and whether, after Felipe escaped from the jail in this town, he saw him at the house of Jacinto de Rivera, his master, or spoke with him on any occasion on whether he himself currently assists Felipe in those parts. Miguel Rodriguez de Góngora responds that he saw Felipe on many occasions entering and leaving different houses at the site of Capitanejo. but that he is not certain where Felipe received assistance. He further states that at other times he saw Felipe passing through those parts, but that he did not see him speaking with his master, nor does he have any information on who assisted him so that he might remain in this district. He affirms that what he knows is for certain. Being required, he ratifies again this testimony as many times as the law permits. He states that the general laws do not apply to him, that he is about 80 years of age more or less, and that because he does not know how to write, he does not sign. The alcalde signs on his behalf before the scribe. And with that, the court records his testimony. Immediately after reviewing the declaration made by Juan de Soto, resident of the city of Puerto Rico and dweller in the district of Ponce, the court takes decisive action. Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town of San Germán, determines that Juan de Soto's declaration is true and genuine, but also finds that it introduces contradictions and new implications that alter the direction of the case. Specifically, the declaration introduces statements attributed to Captain Pedro de Alvarado concerning burned huts on the road to Capitanejo and the suggestion that indications that had already been found against Francisco de Santiago, leading to his detention. The court notes that Pedro de Alvarado protests these implications, stating that what was being attempted was to retwist or recolor the meaning of his earlier declaration, and that what he actually said pertained to the negative portion of his testimony. He asserts that the way his words are now being used appears malicious, a tactic the court recognizes as common in contentious criminal proceedings. Pedro de Alvarado further states that he has not been notified on the final disposition of the case and does not know the outcome. At the same time, the court becomes aware that Jacinto de Torres Montañez, the son-in-law of Juan de Soto, who had earlier been cited, is present in the town by order of the alcalde and is expected to return and give further declaration concerning these matters. Given the seriousness of the contradictions, the circulations of statements affecting the course of justice, and the necessity of securing the truth, the alcalde orders immediate imprisonment. He commands that Juan de Soto and Captain Pedro de Alvarado be taken into custody, placed in the public jail of San Germán, and that each be put in shackles as required for the proper administration of justice for this cause. The court further orders that Jacinto de Torres Montañez be formally examined again and that his declaration be received without delay. The order is signed by Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde, and recorded by the notary of the court. Bring in the next witness. May 25th, 1695, in the town of San Germán. The court orders the appearance of Juan Mulato, a black enslaved man belonging to the state of Blas de la Candelaria, for further justification of what is contained in the criminal cause. Juan Mulato is brought before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of the town and its jurisdiction. He is sworn by God and the sign of the cross and promises to tell the truth. He appears as a person who assisted Francisco de Santiago, who is now imprisoned in the public jail of this town. Having been admonished and shown the tenure of this cause, and having heard it and understood it, Juan Mulato declares the following. He states that he has remained uncertain and restrained in declaring what pertains in this criminal cause, except for the following. He says that Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, while being in Guamo, same time earlier, told him that Francisco de Santiago had offered him 200 reales in order to kill Juana Díaz. He states that Felipe told him that he did not carry out this act, nor consent to it, but instead fled because of the other crimes he had committed, for which he had been condemned to death. Juan Mulato states that Felipe charged him strictly with secrecy, ordering him not to communicate this matter to Domingo de Leon, husband of Juana Díaz, because Felipe did not want the matter known to him. He further declares that afterward, because he found himself oppressed and under the power of Francisco de Santiago, he swore to him that he would not commit any fatal act nor kill Juana Díaz. He then declares that this is the truth as he knows it, that on the night before Sunday, he heard that Juana Díaz had been killed. He states that when Francisco de Santiago arrived at his house, coming from the mill, this declarant heard him say to Magdalena de Torres y Aponte, his wife, that your grace was well informed because Juana Díaz was going to Cuamo to complain to the lieutenant about a piece of linen that was missing. According to Juan Mulatto, Francisco de Santiago replied that he would intercept her on the road. He states that his wife begged him not to kill Juana Díaz, saying that she herself would pay for the missing linen. Francisco de Santiago replied that a man must defend his credit and reputation in public, and for those reasons, Juan Mulatto states that he heard Francisco de Santiago say, on one occasion or another, that he was throwing this declarant out of the house at night. He declares that what he heard in these exchanges as they occurred, but afterward, he could not prevent what happened because husband and wife spoke in such a manner that they did not fully understand all that has passed between them at night. Juan Mulatto says that this is all he knows. The declaration is recorded. Bring in the next witness. May 25th, 1695, in the town of San Germán. The court orders that Juan de Soto, who is imprisoned in the public jail of this town, be brought before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of this town and its jurisdiction. Juan de Soto is placed before the court. From him, an oath is received by God and by the sign of the cross. He promises to tell the truth. His confession is then taken. Juan de Soto is questioned as to whether Felipe, the black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, is present in those parts, whether he has been seen there, or whether he has been assisted openly or secretly by any person. Juan de Soto responds that he has no knowledge of this matter. He states that he does not know where Felipe is or may be, nor whether he was a fugitive for other crimes he may have committed. He adds that he has not seen Felipe for many days, stating that the last time he knew of him was when Felipe was in the valley of Cuamo, where he is under guard before the killing of Juana Díaz, to which Felipe was obligated. Juan de Soto says that he was in the place where he last saw him. Felipe later departed in connection with council decisions and imprisonments that were taking place at that time, and that this is all he knows regarding the matter. Further questions and follow-up questions concerning the case are put to him. Juan de Soto then states that the statement and declaration he previously made concerning the reasons already referred to in this case are clear, open, and truthful. He declares that, according to what was contained in this record, Francisco de Santiago killed Juana Díaz, and that this is the truth under the oath he has taken. He affirms and ratifies the confession, stating that if necessary, he repeats it again in the same terms. He explains that this understanding was made known to him by his brother-in-law, Jacinto de Torres Montañez, and that he has nothing more to add or remove. Juan de Soto further states that although the general legal prohibitions applied to him with respect to Francisco de Santiago, this has not caused them to refrain from telling the truth. His Grace orders the confession be suspended so that proceedings and the cause may continue. The confession is signed by Guillermo de Lugo and by Juan de Soto before the notary who attests to it. Bring in the next witness. May 25th, 1695, in the town of San Germán. Immediately after reviewing the confession of Juan de Soto, prisoner in the public jail, the declaration of Juan Mulatto, formerly enslaved to Blas de la Candelaria, and the letter that the same day from Pedro Garcia Romero, dated the 23rd of the month, Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario, determines that the matter requires further consideration for the orderly administration of royal justice. From the confession, declaration, and letter, the court finds that it is established and more fully proven that Captain Pedro de Alvarado, who is present in the town, has custody of the person in which Francisco de Santiago killed Juana Díaz, as appears in the record. Because of this, the alcalde orders that the letter from Pedro Garcia Romero be added to the proceedings so that it may be formally recorded, that Captain Pedro de Alvarado be confined into the jail and prison in which he is presently held, that Juan de Soto be transferred from that jail to the town prison, and that he is not to be released on bail under penalty of confiscation of property, that proceedings be taken against the jailer and that no other order be given to him, and that Juan de Soto's confession be formally taken and entered into the record. The order is issued by Guillermo de Lugo and recorded by the notary of the court. Bring in the next witness. Following this order, Pedro Garcia Romero reports back to the alcalde by letter. He states that he received the alcalde's order dated the 21st of the month, directing him to take the oath of Doña Maria Colon, who was ill, as was publicly known. He confirms that he carried out this instruction. Under oath, Doña Maria Colon, daughter of Doña Sebastiana Colon, declares the following. While she was in the house of Captain Pedro de Alvarado, Alferez Francisco de Alvarado told her, who was staying in the hut in the house of Marcos Camacho, said that one night he saw Pedro Garcia Romero speaking with neighbors about the death of Juana Díaz, and that she replied that she did not know who killed her. She states that she heard nothing further, and that she did not continue speaking with the neighbors alongside Pedro Garcia Romero. She further declares that on other occasions, Captain Pedro de Alvarado said that he was present when he ordered his maid to be punished, and that the girl was beaten in her room, and that afterward, Francisco de Santiago beat her and she was killed. She adds that to finish her off more quickly, he ordered the throat of Juana Díaz to be cut. Doña Maria Colon swears to this, the declaration by God, and by under the sign of the cross, ratifying it in the first, second, and third time. Although the general legal prohibitions apply to her, she states that this does not prevent her from telling the truth. She declares herself to be about 18 years old, and she does not know how to write, and makes her customary mark. Domingo Garcia is present to witness the act. Pedro Garcia Romero signs so that the declaration may be recorded. Bring in the next witness. May 26, 1695. In the town of San Germán, there appears Captain Pedro de Alvarado, who was imprisoned in this cause, before Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario of this town and its jurisdiction, for the purpose of taking his confession. From him, before the notary, the court receives an oath by God and by the sign of the cross. Having sworn and promised to tell the truth, he is questioned as follows. Captain Pedro de Alvarado declares that he is a native of the Valley of Guamo and resident of this town. He retained militia captain on this island, single and occupied in the administration of his estates. He states that he is about 46 years of age, more or less. He is asked whether he knows the cause for which he is imprisoned. He responds that he is imprisoned because there is a declaration contained in the proceedings concerning the death inflicted on Juana Díaz of the district of Ponce, and that his imprisonment was ordered by Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario. He is asked whether in his prior declaration he protested in the contents of the citations made against him. He responds that he did so, explaining that he was not in a position to address the citations fully at this time, due to his obligations, the management of his estates, his duties as steward of the Holy Church in the Valley of Guamo, his responsibility to the confraternity of the Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception, and the travel required of him in the city of Puerto Rico. Because of these many occupations, he states that he does not concern himself with judicial papers or proceedings. He is asked what words were spoken while he was in the house in the territory of Ponce, speaking with Alferez Francisco de Alvarado, his uncle, in the presence of Doña Maria Colon, daughter of Doña Sebastiana Colon, concerning the death of Juana Díaz. He is specifically asked whether on that occasion Francisco de Santiago killed her, placed the rope around her neck to finish her more quickly, removed her from the bed, and beat her, as appears on the record. Captain Pedro de Alvarado declares that while he was speaking in the house about the death, comments were made suggesting that Juana Díaz had been playing cards on the night with Pedro Garcia Romero, and that the blows were intended against her. He states that Doña Maria Colon denied this, saying that she herself had not played cards nor knew of such events. He declares that he told Doña Maria not to proceed further nor involve herself, and that he told his uncle not to condemn the young woman because, as he had generally heard said, Juana Díaz was found lying in her bed, and Francisco de Santiago beat her and killed her in the kitchen, and that in order for her to die more quickly, he placed a rope around her neck. He states that he spoke these words so that no further talk would continue about this matter, because it was not his natural disposition to inquire into the lives of others. He adds that if Juana Díaz was killed and another committed the act, he does not know by whom, because no one would commit such an atrocious crime openly. He affirms, having reflected upon his memory, this is how it occurred and how he said it, and that he cannot deny it, and thus confesses it as a Christian. He is then asked whether, after making the preceding declaration, he has knowledge of who might have been the killer or principal aggressor, or whether he knows of the rope found around Juana Díaz's neck. He responds that he has no direct knowledge beyond what he has already stated, other than having heard generally that Francisco de Santiago killed her. He states that he has not seen the rope previously, that he does not know whose it was, and that it appeared old, of a size that could serve either a horse or a donkey. Other questions and re-questions are put to him. He declares that he knows nothing more than what he has already stated, and that this is the truth. He affirms and ratifies both the confession and his prior declaration, stating that he places himself at the mercy of the tribunal. He declares that if he had known who committed the crime or had seen it carried out, he would have declared it openly. He acknowledges that the general legal prohibitions applied to him with respect to Francisco de Santiago due to his kinship. Having seen this confession, Guillermo de Lugo orders that it remain recorded and that the proceeding be suspended as fitting. He further orders that Captain Pedro de Alvarado be released from prison, but that he remain confined in this town, not breaking confinement nor leaving without further order from the alcalde or a competent judge. Captain Pedro de Alvarado makes his mark. Guillermo de Lugo signs. The confession is certified by the notary of the court. Bring in the next witness. Late May 1695, the town of San Germán. Miguel Sanchez de Cadiz, resident of the town and court-appointed defender in the criminal cause concerning the death of Juana Díaz, formally appears before the tribunal of Guillermo de Lugo, alcalde ordinario, acting on behalf of the parties under his defense. In his petition, the defender argues the following points: that it is necessary and proper for a commission to be enforced for the arrest of Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, and for him to be placed in the public jail of San Germán, because the burden of this case rests upon him. That such a commission had already been issued by the order of the alcalde and directed to Captain Pedro Sanchez de Matos, captain of war of the district of Ponce, but that no result or execution of this order has yet been reported. That the term of proof has expired, and that very little time remains for the court to provide relief for such a long imprisonment suffered by Francisco de Santiago, which has continued without proven culpability, appearing against Domingo de Leon and Valerio de Leon. That the declarations in the record, both summary and plenary, are consistent and not contradictory, and that they point only towards Felipe, who is absent and in flight. That because Felipe is absent, the acts attributed to him cannot be fully justified, but that it nevertheless appears that he was the aggressor, given the serious and atrocious crimes that he had previously committed, for which he had already been condemned to death by royal justice. That the later accusations suggesting Francisco de Santiago ordered Felipe to kill Juana Díaz are not proven, and therefore no guilt results against Francisco de Santiago, nor against Juan de Soto, Jacinto de Torres Montañez, or Captain Pedro de Alvarado, whose declarations merely reflect what they have heard spoken publicly. The defender further positions that the seized goods of Francisco de Santiago be recognized as belonging to Magdalena de Torres Aponte, his wife, as part of her dowry, and that these goods be restored to her, as required by the law and royal statutes protecting women and their dowries, since guilt has not been established against her or her children. That the fiscal prosecutor, Antonio de Castro, be ordered to respond formally in the cause and return these records, as he has thus far failed to do so, causing delay. That Juan de Soto, Jacinto de Torres Montañez, and Captain Pedro de Alvarado be released, due to the harm their imprisonment causes their households and the royal service, especially given their limited understanding of legal matters. After reviewing the petition and its contents, Guillermo de Lugo, Alcalde Ordinario of San Germán, issues the formal order. With respect to the imprisonment of Felipe, providence is ordered in accordance with the commission already entrusted to Captain Pedro Sanchez de Matos, though no result has yet been obtained. In view of the position requesting the release of Juan de Soto, Jacinto de Torres Montañez, and Captain Pedro de Alvarado, and considering the necessity of their presence in their homes in the service of His Majesty, as well as the rustic condition and lack of legal sophistication, the court orders that Captain Pedro de Alvarado, Juan de Soto, be released from prison. All three men are formally admonished to refrain from further actions in this matter, under penalty to be imposed if they do not comply. The fiscal prosecutor is noted to respond and return the records to the court and is instructed to justify what is stated so that the final order may be issued. This order is signed by Guillermo de Lugo. On June 1st, 1695, after reviewing the full record and formal petition submitted by Antonio de Castro, faithful executor and fiscal prosecutor of the cause, Guillermo de Lugo, Alcalde Ordinario of San Germán, determines that the case has not been successfully justified. The court states that Francisco de Santiago, prisoner in the public jail, has not been legitimately justified by the statements that have run the record. The testimony of Felipe, a black enslaved man belonging to Jacinto de Rivera, cannot be fully evaluated because Felipe is a fugitive and has not been apprehended despite diligencies ordered for his capture. Francisco de Santiago has denied everything in the confession previously taken from him. For the greater justification of the cause, the alcalde orders that Francisco de Santiago be subject to torture, to be administered in ordinary legal form, with the manner and punishments to be resolved by the judge according to the law. This order is formally issued, signed, and recorded. The order is personally notified to Francisco de Santiago, the prisoner, Domingo de Leon, husband of Juana Díaz, Miguel Sanchez de Cadiz, defender of the cause, and Antonio de Castro, fiscal prosecutor. On June 6, 1695, Guillermo de Lugo, accompanied by the notary, proceeds to the public jail to carry out the torture. Francisco de Santiago is warned that he must tell the truth, that if he dies, is mutilated, or loses blood during the torture, it will be at his own risk and fault, according to the law. During the administration of the torture, by turns of the court, Francisco de Santiago repeatedly states that he has no guilt, great or small. He does not know who killed Juana Díaz, beyond what he has already declared. He bore no ill will towards Juana Díaz or her husband, whom he states had previously been his friends. Those who accuse him are his enemies, and what they said are lies. As the torture progresses, through multiple turns, he repeatedly invokes the Virgin of the Rosary, stating that he is being killed unjustly and that he is a Christian. He states that malice lies with Felipe, enslaved to Jacinto de Rivera, who he says has committed other crimes and may have killed Juana Díaz, just as the other neighbors in Ponce had been involved in violent acts. At the final turn, Francisco de Santiago cries that he is being killed. The alcalde orders the torture to stop. Francisco de Santiago is then returned to the stocks of the corral, where his arms and legs are bound and the cords loosened. Guards are ordered to watch him carefully so that he does not die and so that control of his body and limbs are maintained. The execution of the torture, the responses given, and the witnesses present are all formally recorded and signed. On June 7, 1695, after reviewing the torture of Francisco de Santiago, the responses he gave under torture, and the existing proceedings concerning the death of Juana Díaz, Guillermo de Lugo issues a new judicial order. The court determines that Francisco de Santiago's response implicate Felipe, enslaved to Jacinto de Rivera, as the killer and aggressor. No other reasons have been established beyond those that align Felipe's confession and other crimes. Felipe's flight is proven, including his escape from jail on more than one occasion. Arrest orders and had already been issued twice to apprehend him without success. For the fuller examination of the matter, the alcalde orders that the cause against Felipe be accumulated and joined to the present case. Proceedings also extend to Jacinto de Rivera, Felipe's master. Sergeant Major Juan de Torres y Figueroa, Alcalde Ordinario, proceed to investigate Felipe's crimes more fully so that the matter may run jointly as one cause and remain on record in the matter most fitting and proper to administration of royal justice. What you have heard is not a theory, it's a record. Page after page, oath after oath, confession after confession, denial after denial. This is what survives. This is what is written down, and this is where it ends. The investigation does not conclude with an arrest in chains. It does not end with a sentence read aloud in a plaza. There is no execution order. There is no final judgment. The man named again and again, Felipe, enslaved to Jacinto de Rivera, is never apprehended. He is described as a fugitive. He is pursued. His cause is ordered and accumulated. But he is never brought before the court. He never testified. He is never sentenced. He disappears from the record. Another man, Francisco de Santiago, is imprisoned. He is accused. He is confronted with witnesses. He is subject to torture, and even under torture, he denies responsibility. He names no accomplice. He confesses to nothing. The court records his words, his cries, and his refusal to yield. Others are jailed and then released. Declarations contradict one another. Confessions are ratified, challenged, retracted, and reaffirmed. And then, the record stops. No page tells us what happens next. No clerk writes down what the final justice was. No hand records closure. This is not a failure of storytelling. This is how colonial justice worked. In 1695, there were no detectives, no forensic reports, no fingerprints. Justice moved through rumor, through oath, through coercion, and through fear. Truth was something the court attempted to extract, sometimes with words, sometimes with pain. What remains is not certainty, but process. And now, the process ends here, where the archive ends. So I will not tell you who is guilty. The record does not do that for us. Instead, I place you where this case was already meant to be decided. You have heard the witnesses, you have heard the confessions and the denials. You have seen who fled, who stayed, who spoke, and who remained silent. You have seen how power, status, and bondage shaped what could be said and what could not. You are now the jury. Cast your votes in the comments. Who do you believe killed Juana Díaz and why? I am Dyron Castro Torres, the genealogist, and this is just the beginning.